All right, live Q&A. We have three questions today, so still trying to figure out the Instagram and YouTube, whatever. So we got two going here, but anyway, first question: on the first purchase, should you buy to live in it or as an investment? Great question. Yeah, I think there's a few things to consider here. So first of all, depends on your current situation and where you want to live, because typically, if you can afford where you want to live, so for example, if you're looking in the city of Toronto and you can afford to get into a market like Toronto and it makes sense for you to purchase where you want to live, it's a great option to consider buying a place to live in first. Rents are not exactly the cheapest these days, and that could be a good option to start building your real estate portfolio, or just to get into the market and start there. The other thing to consider is the first time buyer rebates. So for example, you have rebates like land transfer and different things on closing costs. So super important to consider. If you are going to live in it, then you get access to those first time buyer rebates only on your first purchase, of course. So that's also with the new first home savings plan. I believe that's the FHSA. So first home savings account, that comes into play there as well. And then also, there is the land transfer rebate we already mentioned. So yeah, your first time buyer rebates, that's super important. And then down payment too. If you're buying for an investment purpose, your down payment may be different than if you're buying for yourself. So typically your first purchase, if you're buying for yourself, you might have the minimum down payment saved up, and then you can use that minimum down payment, versus if you're buying for an investment, you may need to put down even as much as 20 to 25%. It depends on the lender, of course. So super important to note what you're buying for, and that's a super important thing to consider. Just turning the mic on here for Instagram. Let's see if that works there. So that's the first thing. So those are definitely things to consider. Should you buy to live in it or buy as an investment first? Really depends on your budget, your area, and if you want to take advantage of the first time buyer rebates or not. Definitely comes into play if you're going to live in it. Next question: Airbnb or long-term rental? This is a great question, and I've actually had both of these options myself. I've done Airbnb since 2014 was the first one I had on that platform, and I tend to go back and forth. I do think the number one important thing to consider right now is different cities have different rules when it comes to Airbnb. So if you are looking to get an Airbnb rental, it's really important to know the rules in the city that you're looking to purchase. Also super important to know not only in the city, but in the building. So if you're looking for a condo in downtown Toronto, for example, Toronto has its own Airbnb rules. You also should consider if the building allows it to, because if they don't allow it, it's going to be a big headache to get people in and out of the property. I would also say Airbnb, of course, you might be able to get more in rent per month gross. And I say the word gross because there are a lot of fees that come with Airbnb as well. So typically Airbnb takes its own fee. That could be as like 3 to 8% depending. Do you need a property manager to take care of it? Like, who's going to be taking care of the calendar? Who's going to be taking care of the move-ins? Are you looking to answer phone calls late at night because somebody can't get in, their flight got delayed or whatever, and you have to get them in the property? All those kind of things are worth considering when it comes to Airbnb. There's definitely a lot of work. I know when I rented mine, I did it a few different ways. At first, I used to do it on my own. So I used to manage the calendar, take care of everything, meet the guests, and get them into the property, get them all set up. And then between guests, you got to get the cleaning, you got to get the repairs done, make sure the furniture is working, all that stuff. The furniture is up to par for the next guest, and basically rinse and repeat for every single guest. So it does come into play, like how much you want to be hands-on. And not saying that an investment property where you have a long-term tenant is not hands-on. However, you might not have to do a changeover of tenant every single day or 2 days or whatever it may be. So if you have one tenant, you're just calling to take care of the property, make sure that if there's any issues, they're well taken care of and promptly. But if you have Airbnb, you're doing this every single person and every single changeover guest. So definitely different factors to consider, and different cities have different rules and all that stuff. Next question: condo versus house. I get this question a lot. It really, first, it depends on your budget and the area that you're looking to purchase in. And it depends on the price gap between condos and houses for that particular area. In a city like Toronto, the gap between an entry level condo and an entry level house is probably somewhere like close to, I mean, the gap is quite substantial. So it could depend on whether or not that house is close enough to a price as a condo when you factor in the condo purchase price plus maintenance fees get added onto the mortgage and things like that. On the house standpoint, you also have to factor in things like heat and gas and electricity, water bills, whereas in a condo you may only have to factor in the condo fee plus hydro depending on the building, and obviously insurance and things like that, and mortgage. But it definitely depends on the cost to carry, and some markets the gap is not as big, so it may be a little more attractive if you can get into a house or a townhouse. Whereas in Toronto the gap is quite a bit bigger, and but I mean, if you can afford the house on the first time around or second time around, then that's an option. But if you can't get to the house just yet, a condo is a good place to start because it'll allow you to have the ability to invest in a property over time and live in it and let it do its thing along with the market over time. And hopefully you can springboard that equity into a house as you move forward. So that would be condo versus house. I know it's a long answer. Yeah, that's it. So hope those questions were answered. Keep those questions coming because every week, every Friday, we're going to be on here answering questions. And the more questions that come in, the more I'll have content to record for answers. So anyway, have a great Friday. Enjoy the weather. It's sunny here in Toronto and hopefully stays nice and warm over time.